From the sands of time, where stories unfold, to the heights of dreams, where the brave and bold, we trace the lines of cultures untold, in the heart of the journey where futures are sold. From the sands of time, where stories unfold, to the heights of dreams, where the brave and bold, we trace the lines of cultures untold, in the heart of the journey where futures are sold. Finance and fate, they dance in the night, travelers and seekers chasing the light. Outcome mapping, we chart the fight. In the Ngolia report we ignite. Oh, we rise, we climb, we break the mold.
All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into the Ngolia Report podcast.
Sounds good.
Have a chance to listen to it.
I have. Yeah, it's quite a fascinating podcast.
It is. There's a lot going on. So much so that we're going to split this deep dive into 3 parts.
Okay.
There's just so much in there.
Yeah, it covers a wide range of topics.
It really does. Everything from culture and history to finance and human excellence.
Right. And they even touch on trending topics and this concept called outcome mapping.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But first, I want to hear your initial impressions. What stood out to you the most?
Well, what struck me is how they weave together seemingly unrelated topics. Like they'll connect ancient Australian navigation techniques with modern personal finance strategies.
Okay, I see where you're going with that.
It highlights how deeply culture influences every aspect of our lives, even how we manage money.
It's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of illustrating that point with specific examples.
Absolutely. Like the one about Indigenous Australian cultures navigating by cardinal directions instead of left or right.
Yeah, that one really got me thinking. If something as basic as spatial awareness is culturally ingrained, what other assumptions do we make without even realizing it?
Exactly. And that ties directly into their discussions on communication styles.
Oh, right. They talk about how some cultures value directness while others prioritize harmony and use more indirect language.
Right. So what might seem like evasiveness in one culture is actually politeness in another.
That's so important to keep in mind, especially in today's globalized world.
Absolutely. It can prevent misunderstandings and help us build stronger relationships across cultures.
Okay, so we've talked about culture, but the Ngolia report also dives deep into history, right?
Yeah. And they suggest that what we know may be incomplete or even deliberately manipulated.
That's a bold statement. How do they back that up?
Well, they use dramatic reenactments to explore alternative historical scenarios.
Okay.
Like they'll ask, what if this event had happened differently?
Oh, I see. So it's about challenging the traditional narratives and considering different perspectives.
Exactly. One example they use is the story of the Library of Alexandria. Was its destruction a tragic accident or a deliberate act of suppressing knowledge?
That's a fascinating question. And by exploring those alternative scenarios, it makes you think more critically about the information we're presented with.
Right. It helps us become more discerning consumers of history and less likely to accept things at face value.
Okay, so we've covered culture and history. Now, what about travel? How does the Ngolia report approach that topic?
They go beyond the typical tourist attractions and talk about how travel can transform us personally.
Okay, I like that idea. It's not just about seeing the sights, but about having experiences that change the way we see the world.
Exactly. They emphasize the importance of experiencing different cultures firsthand, not just as a spectator, but as a participant.
Right, getting out of our comfort zones and immersing ourselves in something new.
Yeah, and they do a great job of blending practical travel tips with those personal stories.
For example,
Well, they suggest that instead of just visiting famous landmarks, we should try to connect with locals, sample their cuisine, and maybe learn a few basic phrases in their language.
I love that. It's about having more authentic and meaningful travel experiences.
Exactly. And it ties back to that theme of cultural immersion that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so we've explored culture, history, and travel through the lens of the Ngolia Report podcast. Now let's talk about how they tackle personal finance.
They emphasize financial literacy as the key to success, regardless of income level.
So it's not just about how much money you make, but about how you manage it.
Exactly. They argue that understanding basic financial principles, earning, saving, investing, can empower us to make informed choices and achieve our financial goals.
Okay, that makes sense. And they don't shy away from pointing out common financial mistakes people make, right?
Like ignoring where their money goes or delaying saving for retirement.
Those are definitely traps that a lot of people fall into.
Yeah. And one of their key takeaways is the importance of creating what they call a wealth blueprint.
A wealth blueprint. What's that?
It involves setting clear financial goals, tracking your expenses, and developing a plan for saving and investing.
So it's about being proactive and taking control of your finances rather than just letting things happen.
Exactly. And they provide a lot of practical advice on how to do that.
I'm curious about their pay yourself first principle.
Ah, yes.
Ah.
They suggest that we should change our mindset around saving. Instead of saving what's left over after spending, we should treat saving like a non-negotiable expense.
Like paying rent or utilities.
Exactly. Make it a priority.
Okay, so we've covered culture, history, travel, and finance through the lens of the Ngolia Report podcast. But they cover so much more, including human excellence and this concept called outcome mapping. What can you tell us about those?
Well, they break down human excellence into 5 core pillars: mindset, mastery, resilience, purpose, and consistency.
5 pillars. Okay, what's interesting about their approach?
They don't present excellence as some unattainable trait, but rather as a set of habits and practices that anyone can develop.
So it's not about being perfect, but about striving for continuous improvement.
Exactly. And they provide actionable steps for each pillar, encouraging listeners to identify limiting beliefs, commit to mastering a skill, and establish consistent habits that support their goals.
Okay, so the very practical and achievable approach to excellence.
Thanks.
And what about outcome mapping? It sounds pretty complex.
It is a strategic framework, but they explain it in a way that's easy to understand. Essentially, it's about shifting our focus from simply chasing numbers to achieving meaningful outcomes.
I see. So instead of just measuring how many people visited our website, we should be asking, did our content inspire them to take action? Did it change their behavior in a meaningful way?
Exactly. And that's where the mapping comes in. It involves identifying specific actions or behaviors we want to see, then designing strategies and experiences that encourage those behaviors.
So it's about being intentional and strategic in our approach rather than just hoping for the best.
Precisely. And the key to outcome mapping is that it's an iterative process. We need to constantly track our progress, measure the impact of our efforts, and adapt our strategies based on what we learn.
So it's not a set it and forget it approach, but rather a continuous cycle of planning, implementing, measuring, and adapting.
Exactly. And the Ngolia report provides a step-by-step guide for implementing outcome mapping, emphasizing the importance of clearly defined goals, understanding our target audience, and creating value-driven experiences that foster genuine engagement.
Okay, that makes sense. But why should our listener care about outcome mapping? How can they apply this concept to their own life or work?
Well, outcome mapping isn't just for organizations. It's a valuable framework for anyone who wants to achieve meaningful goals, whether it's building a stronger community, launching a successful project, or even just improving personal habits.
So if I want to, say, start a new exercise routine, I could use outcome mapping to define my goals, identify the behaviors that will help me achieve those goals, and create a plan for tracking my progress and making adjustments along the way.
Exactly. And by focusing on the desired outcome in this case, improved fitness, you're more likely to stay motivated and make sustainable changes.
I see. So outcome mapping is a powerful tool for creating positive change, both on an individual and organizational level.
Absolutely. And the Ngolia report does a great job of explaining this complex concept in a way that's both accessible and actionable.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From ancient cultures to modern financial strategies, from the power of travel to the principles of human excellence. And we've delved into this fascinating concept of outcome mapping, which can be a game changer for anyone looking to achieve meaningful goals.
And we've only just scratched the surface of what the Ngolia Report podcast has to offer.
Right. They even have a teaser at the end of this episode for their upcoming deep dive into the Kamba people of Kenya, promising a rich exploration of their culture, traditions, and connection to the land. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's circle back to what we've already explored and see how it all ties together.
Sounds good to me. Let's unpack those connections and see what key takeaways we can glean for our listener.
So one thing that really stood out to me is how they connect everything back to this idea of interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Like no matter what they're talking about, whether it's like you said, ancient cultures or modern technology, it always comes back to how seemingly like different ideas and events are actually all linked.
Right. And it's not always in obvious ways either.
Exactly. It makes you think about things from a whole new perspective.
And it makes me think about that segment they did on trending topics.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just about like, here's what's happening in the news right now. It was more about like encouraging us to look beyond the headlines and consider the underlying forces that are shaping the world.
Yeah. Like they were saying that understanding current events is crucial for navigating change effectively.
When making informed decisions.
Right, in all areas of our lives,
Yeah.
from our careers to our personal relationships.
So it's not just about being like a passive observer of the news cycle. It's about becoming an active participant in shaping the future. Exactly. They were saying that the world is constantly evolving, and those who thrive are the ones who like adapt and learn and contribute to positive change.
And that brings us back to their message about human excellence.
Right.
They don't just tell us what excellence is, they actually give us a roadmap for achieving it.
Yeah, and what I found really inspiring was that they made it clear that excellence isn't just this like innate quality that only a select few possess.
Right.
It's more like a set of habits and practices that anyone can develop.
So it's not about being perfect or comparing ourselves to others. It's more about striving for continuous improvement and like making the most of our unique talents and abilities.
Exactly. And they encourage us to like identify our limiting beliefs and challenge our assumptions and embrace that growth mindset.
And growth mindset.
Yeah, the one that allows us to learn from our mistakes and constantly evolve.
Right. Because mistakes are inevitable.
They are. And it's how we learn and grow from them that really matters.
Okay. And they also talk a lot about the importance of purpose. Like they were saying that true excellence isn't just about achieving personal success.
It's about using our talents to make a positive impact on the world.
Right. So aligning our actions with a sense of purpose.
Which taps into a deeper well of motivation and fulfillment.
I really connected with that idea. It's not just about climbing the ladder of success.
Right.
It's about asking ourselves, what kind of impact do I want to have in the world?
Exactly. And the Ngolia report gives us some pretty practical tools for answering that question.
Like what?
Well, they encourage us to reflect on our values, identify the issues that we care about most, and find ways to contribute to solutions.
So whether it's volunteering our time or supporting a cause we believe in, or even just like being more mindful of our impact on the environment.
Right. They're basically saying that we all have the power to make a difference.
And they make a really compelling case for why this matters.
They do.
Because in a world facing, all these complex challenges, we can't afford to just be passive bystanders. We need to be active participants in shaping the future we want to see.
Exactly. And that ties back to their discussion of outcome mapping.
Right.
It's not just about setting goals. It's about designing strategies that lead to meaningful change.
So being intentional about the outcomes we want to achieve.
Exactly. They emphasize the importance of understanding the behaviors we want to see.
In ourselves, our teams, our communities.
Right. And then we can create experiences and systems that encourage those behaviors.
So instead of just hoping for the best, we need to be strategic in our approach to achieving our goals.
Exactly. And they give us some pretty practical tips for implementing outcome mapping in our own lives.
Whether it's improving our personal habits or launching a new project or building a stronger community.
Yeah, they provide a really useful framework for creating positive change.
Before we move on to that teaser about the Kampa people, I want to touch on something else that really impressed me about the Ngolia report.
Okay.
It's their ability to present these complex ideas in a way that's both accessible and engaging.
Yeah, I agree with you there. They managed to strike that balance between intellectual depth and entertainment value.
It's not easy to do.
Definitely not. And they use storytelling and sound effects and dynamic dialogue to keep the listener hooked.
And they're not afraid to ask thought-provoking questions.
Which is so important.
It is. It's those questions that challenge our assumptions and make us think more critically.
They're not just telling us what to think. They're inviting us to join the conversation and form our own conclusions.
And I think that's what sets the Ngolia report apart. They're not just providing information. They're creating an experience.
An experience that inspires us to learn, grow, and make a positive impact on the world.
Well said. So are you ready to dive into their teaser about the Kampa people of Kenya?
Absolutely. They've definitely piqued my curiosity with their description of a culture deeply connected to its heritage, where stories are sung and history is woven into the fabric and identity is etched into the land itself.
It sounds like a rich and vibrant culture with a lot to teach us.
Yeah, they talk about their resilience in the face of challenges.
Their vibrant artistic traditions.
And their deep respect for their ancestors and the natural world.
It sounds like they're setting the stage for a really fascinating exploration of this community.
They are, and they hint at the Kamba people's unique understanding of time,
and their approach to problem solving,
suggesting that there are some valuable lessons to be learned from their worldview.
It makes you wonder, what can we learn from a culture that views time not as linear, but as cyclical?
Right, where the past, present, and future are all interconnected.
And how can their approach to problem solving, which emphasizes collaboration and consensus building,
right,
inform our own efforts to address the challenges we face today?
It's definitely something to think about.
These are just a few of the questions that the Ngolia report raises, leaving us eager to learn more about the Kamba people and the wisdom they have to share. But before we get too carried away with anticipation for their upcoming episode, let's take a step back and consider what this deep dive has revealed about the Ngolia Report podcast as a whole.
Okay.
Because they're clearly more than just a source of information.
They are. They're curators of ideas,
weaving together these diverse topics to create a tapestry of knowledge that challenges our assumptions and expands our understanding of the world.
And empowers us to make a positive impact.
And they do it all with this unique blend of intellectual depth, engaging storytelling, and those thought-provoking questions.
Right, making the learning process both stimulating and enjoyable.
They're a great example of how a podcast can be more than just entertainment.
It can be.
It can be a catalyst for personal growth and a source of inspiration and a powerful tool for creating positive change.
I agree with you there.
So as we wrap up our exploration of the Ngolia report, what are the key takeaways for our listener? What can they take away from this journey and apply to their own lives?
I think one of the most important takeaways is the power of curiosity. Yeah, the Ngolia report encourages us to never stop questioning and exploring and seeking out new knowledge.
They're reminding us that learning is a lifelong journey.
It is.
And that the world is full of fascinating discoveries just waiting to be made.
And they challenge us to go beyond just consuming information.
Right, to apply what we learn.
To take action.
And to make a difference in the world.
They're showing us that knowledge is most valuable when it's shared, discussed, and used to create positive change.
So whether it's exploring the depths of ancient cultures,
or mastering the principles of personal finance,
or embracing the power of outcome mapping,
right,
the Ngolia report provides a wealth of insights that can empower us to live more fulfilling and impactful and meaningful lives.
And they do it all with this contagious enthusiasm that makes you want to keep learning and growing and exploring.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listener with a final thought to ponder as they continue their own journey of learning and growth.
Okay, how about this? What's one small action you can take today inspired by something you learned from the Ngolia Report podcast?
It could be anything from reaching out to someone from a different culture, to setting a financial goal, to simply taking a moment to appreciate the interconnectedness of the world around us.
The key is to take action.
Turn knowledge into positive change.
And never stop exploring
that vast and fascinating world of ideas. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the Ngolia Report podcast, what do you think is the most valuable takeaway?
I think it's how they emphasize the interconnectedness of knowledge.
Interconnectedness.
Yeah, like how understanding these different fields, history, culture, finance, human behavior, it's all essential for navigating the complexities of the modern world.
Right. It's like they're saying we can't afford to be siloed in our thinking anymore.
Yeah, the world just doesn't operate in neat little boxes.
Exactly.
And they give so many concrete examples of that.
Right, like how understanding cultural differences can improve our relationships and even impact our success in a globalized workplace.
Absolutely. Or how recognizing historical patterns can help us avoid repeating the same mistakes.
Not just in our personal lives, but on a larger scale, too.
Right. The Ngolia report is all about connecting those dots, seeing the world with fresh eyes.
And using that knowledge to become better decision makers.
And to become agents of positive change.
And they make it clear that personal growth isn't just about acquiring knowledge.
Right.
It's also about applying it.
Taking action.
Making a difference.
Absolutely.
One thing I really appreciate is how they provide actual frameworks and tools that we can use.
Yeah. Like what?
Like that wealth blueprint for taking control of our finances.
Oh, yeah.
The 5 pillars of human excellence.
And that step-by-step guide to outcome mapping.
Right. Those tools make it so much easier to actually implement what we're learning.
They really do. It's not just passive listening anymore.
And let's not forget how entertaining they make it all.
Oh, yeah. They're so good at that.
The sound effects, the dramatic narration, the dynamic dialogue.
It takes you on the edge of your seat.
It's like they've gamified learning.
Exactly.
It's an adventure.
And they're always asking those thought-provoking questions,
Always.
pushing us to think critically and examine our own beliefs.
It's a brilliant approach.
So, if you're looking for a podcast that will challenge you intellectually, expand your horizons,
Inspire you to take action.
the Ngolia Report podcast is definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. It's the kind of podcast that stays with you.
You keep thinking about it long after the episode is over
And it makes you want to keep learning and growing.
and keep exploring that vast web of knowledge.
Exactly.
Okay, before we sign off, what's one final thought you want to leave with our listeners?
Well, I think it goes back to that idea of interconnectedness.
Okay.
The Ngolia Report reminds us that we're all part of this larger story,
Right.
this complex and evolving narrative that's shaped by culture, history, technology.
And the choices we make each day.
Yeah. So be curious, stay engaged, and never underestimate your own power to make a difference. Beautifully said. So on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the Ngolia Report podcast. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep into the world of ideas.